At exactly 8 near Eastern Time this morning, on this 28th day of February 2026, the geopolitical map of North America was permanently and violently redrawn, while you were likely pouring your first cup of coffee. The historic, unprecedented announcement out of Brussels confirms that Canada has officially secured unrestricted access to a previously locked $150 billion NATO Strategic Defense Fund. For decades, the United States has weaponized its defense funding, utilizing technological sharing agreements as an invisible leash to force Ottawa to align with Washington on everything from global trade agreements to domestic border security policies. Except that leverage just vanished overnight with a single sweeping signature from the NATO Secretary General, granting Canada absolute financial autonomy in its military procurement for the first time since the height of the Cold War. But here is the single terrifying reality that no one in Washington is willing to address on camera today. If America no longer holds the financial reins of NATO's vast northern flank, who just secretly bought the backdoor keys to the Arctic Circle, before you can truly understand what happens next, you need to see exactly how this started. And the answer will absolutely shock you. The immediate details of this morning's financial agreement represent a catastrophic generational failure of American diplomatic pressure and economic coercion. According to the internal unclassified release from the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, this $150 billion capital pool bypasses the United States Treasury entirely. Instead, it draws directly from newly established sovereign wealth contributions that are routed exclusively through the European Central Bank and a syndicate of private European defense contractors. The data makes this undeniable, showing a massive immediate capital flight away from American military manufacturers that have relied on Canadian contracts for over 50 years. In just the first 60 minutes following the Brussels Declaration, shares of Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and Boeing saw a collective market capitalization drop of exactly $122.4 billion on the New York Stock Exchange. Meanwhile, European aerospace consortiums like BAE Systems and Airbus Defence experienced an immediate 7.8% surge in pre-market trading, signaling a violent permanent transfer of industrial wealth across the Atlantic Ocean. Stop right now and think about this for a second. The greatest military superpower in human history just lost its monopolistic grip on its closest geographical neighbor. And the global financial markets reacted before the politicians even woke up. This massive structural shift was quietly formalized during an emergency closed-door summit in Berlin late last night. German and French defense ministers successfully spearheaded a covert initiative to completely decouple NATO's northern operations from the volatile swings of American domestic politics. The immediate, highly visible consequence of this late-night maneuvering is that Canada has officially suspended its planned $32 billion acquisition of American-made autonomous submarine drones. They are instead pivoting entirely to European defense contractors who have explicitly promised full, unrestricted technology transfers to Ottawa. This is a crucial concession that the Pentagon has strictly and aggressively forbidden since the Obama administration in 2011. This unprecedented policy shift means the immediate defense posture of the North American continent is no longer synchronized under a single unified command structure, heavily reliant on American logistical supremacy. But the staggering financial numbers you just heard are only the absolute surface level of this ongoing economic earthquake. What is buried underneath these diplomatic press releases is far more dangerous to the average citizen. And this brings us right back to that glaring, unresolved mystery of who truly dictates the rules of engagement at the Arctic Gateway. Right now, what they are not telling you is that this entire $150 billion financial maneuver was never truly about European military independence or simple defense procurement. It is a highly calculated, ruthless geopolitical chess move specifically designed to exploit the rapidly melting Northwest Passage. This maritime trade route is rapidly transforming into a global shipping highway that will soon process an estimated $4 trillion in international cargo annually. By actively cutting Washington out of the financial and logistical loop, Brussels and Ottawa have effectively established a brand new transatlantic economic corridor. This new alliance now holds the exclusive power to dictate the rules of engagement for highly lucrative deep-sea mining and critical rare earth mineral extraction in the high north. No mainstream outlet is connecting these dots today, but this exact scenario directly mirrors one of the most severe and humiliating diplomatic ruptures of the 20th century. Remember the devastating Suez Crisis of 1956, when Britain and France desperately attempted to seize the canal only to be financially crushed by the United States, threatening to dump the British pound into oblivion? Today, we are witnessing the exact methodical reverse of that historical humiliation playing out in real time. Europe is aggressively weaponizing Allied defense funds to strip American hegemonic power away from a critical, newly accessible global choke point. This aggressive containment strategy was explicitly outlined in a heavily redacted 2023 European Commission white paper titled Arctic Sovereignty in a Multipolar Framework. That highly classified document quietly but firmly argued that American political volatility makes it a completely unreliable partner for long-term territorial administration in these vital polar regions. To permanently achieve this desired independence, the new NATO funding mechanism specifically mandates that all new Canadian defense infrastructure must integrate exclusively with European satellite constellations. Specifically, the Canadian military is now transitioning to the European Galileo network, completely abandoning their historical reliance on the American GPS grid operated by the Space Force. This is the part that changes everything about global power dynamics as we know them today. The United States military relies on absolute uncontested domain awareness to project power, and they just went effectively blind in a critical region encompassing over 3 million square miles of highly disputed resource-rich territory. Yet the underlying economic strategy being deployed here goes even deeper into the realm of modern financial warfare, which brings us right back to the shadow players and foreign entities actively buying up that unprecedented Arctic backdoor access while Washington is paralyzed by distraction. And here is where it gets personal for you. Because this distant geopolitical fracture is going straight into your personal bank account by the end of this month. When heavily integrated global defense supply chains violently decouple like this, the raw cost of critical manufacturing materials instantly skyrockets, and the American consumer is always forced to absorb the resulting inflationary shock. Because Canada is no longer legally bound by stringent American defense procurement treaties, they are currently in the process of aggressively rewriting their export tariffs on titanium, cobalt, and essential rare earth elements. These are the exact same raw materials strictly necessary for both advanced military weaponry and your basic civilian electronics. Within the next 45 days, the baseline cost of manufacturing commercial semiconductors within the United States is officially projected to rise by a staggering 14%. That percentage translates directly to an immediate, unavoidable spike in the retail price of every single smartphone, laptop, and electric vehicle hitting the showroom floor next quarter. But a sudden $200 increase on an Apple iPhone is just the absolute beginning of the impending financial pain. The secondary macroeconomic ripple effect of this geopolitical disaster is going to violently hit the American housing market and aggressively drive up your mortgage rates. Because the European Central Bank is aggressively underwriting this massive new NATO fund, massive institutional investors are currently dumping short-term United States Treasury yields. They are abandoning American debt to buy heavily subsidized, high-yield European defense bonds that offer far better geopolitical stability. When the global demand for United States sovereign debt suddenly plummets, the Federal Reserve is mathematically forced to keep domestic interest rates artificially high to attract foreign buyers back to the dollar. This means if you are currently trying to buy a house, refinance a business loan, or simply carry a standard balance on an everyday credit card, you are directly financing the economic fallout of Washington, losing its historical grip on Ottawa. Have you ever stopped to notice how your local grocery prices never actually went down, even when the mainstream media swore that inflation had finally cooled off? Wait until the massive global shipping routes traversing the Northern Hemisphere are fully and legally disrupted by this new alliance. The long-term economic scenario developing right now is genuinely terrifying. Driven by the inescapable fact that global shipping insurance premiums for North American maritime routes are already violently adjusting to this newly divided command structure. Lloyd's of London issued an unprecedented preliminary risk assessment just this morning. Their data indicates a potential 22% immediate increase in maritime insurance costs for any commercial vessels navigating the northern corridors without joint United States and Canadian military escort guarantees. That massive, unexpected increase in corporate overhead will be mercilessly baked into the retail price of every single imported good sitting on your local supermarket shelf by the end of the current fiscal year. All of this domestic financial bleeding, all of this hidden taxation through inflation, points directly back to the ultimate unresolved question we started with at the very beginning of this broadcast. Who actually owns and dictates the future of that northern passage today? The definitive answer to the terrifying question that absolutely no one in Washington wants to face right now is that the backdoor keys to the Arctic were just legally handed over to a massive shadow coalition. This coalition consists entirely of highly aggressive European energy conglomerates and incredibly wealthy Asian maritime shipping cartels who back the European banking play. By eagerly accepting this massive, European-backed financial fund, Canada has effectively leased its sovereign northern territory to foreign corporate interests who now fully dictate the logistical security architecture of the entire region. America did not just simply lose its historical military leverage over a friendly northern neighbor this morning. They lost the entire future of the northern global trade route to a hostile corporate buyout that was brilliantly disguised as a routine allied defense initiative based on the rapidly accelerating trajectory of these events. Here is your critical 72-hour watch window. There is a near absolute, mathematically undeniable probability that the Pentagon will be forced to announce an emergency, highly visible redeployment of naval strike assets to the Alaskan maritime border by late Friday evening. If the United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee issues a formal binding condemnation of the European NATO fund within the next 48 hours, the reaction will be swift and brutal. We will immediately see a massive retaliatory tariff strike launched directly from Brussels, heavily targeting vulnerable American agricultural exports in the Midwest. Furthermore, you should fully expect a sudden, entirely unexplained resignation from a very high-ranking United States Northern Command military official before this weekend is completely over. The true incalculable cost of this historic geopolitical shift is not measured in the $150 billion physically transferred across the ocean today. It is measured in the irreversible, terrifying reality that the United States is now completely surrounded by former allies who view American global leadership not as a protective shield, but as a dangerous liability they can finally afford to bypass forever. The economic warning signs for this specific calculated betrayal of American hegemony were actually flashing bright red for anyone paying attention several months ago. The next video you absolutely need to watch is already popping up on your screen right now, because what quietly happened in the global sovereign gold markets last October makes everything you just heard in this broadcast make complete terrifying sense. Click on that video right now and I will see you over.